I stood in front of the fridge when I suddenly heard a loud voice say, "Don't even think about touching that food. Marcus's family is coming for dinner." I froze, holding a package of fresh deli meat. Turning around, I noticed my daughter, Jade, in the kitchen doorway. Her arms were folded, her expression was stern, and her mouth formed a thin, tight line. I didn't recognize this side of her. Just hours earlier, I had stocked that refrigerator myself. I had spent nearly $200 of my own funds. At 69 years old, with knees that crackle every time I ascend the stairs and a back that hurts every morning when I rise, I had carried those heavy bags in from the car. Yet I held my tongue. I simply gazed at her, awaiting an explanation, hoping she would reveal it was all a joke, to laugh and embrace me like she did when she was young. She did none of those things. If my wife expressed it, then that was the final word. The voice came from the hallway. It was Marcus Sterling, my son-in-law, the man my daughter decided to make a life with. He was tall, always impeccably dressed, sporting a smile that never truly reached his eyes. He approached and put his hand on Jade's shoulder, a gesture that felt possessive, almost like claiming space. I still had the deli meat in my hand. "Mom, you heard me. I need you not to touch anything in that fridge, nothing at all. My in-laws will arrive in 2 hours. And I can't serve them just anything. This matters a lot to me." Her in-laws, her husband's family, mattered more than I did, more than the woman who gave her life, who nourished her as a child, who spent countless nights awake when she was ill, who sold her own jewelry to fund her education. "I understand, sweetie," was all I managed to reply, because something within me fractured at that moment. It wasn't loud. There was no yelling or chaos. It was quiet, much like a dry branch being broken, a subtle yet evident crunch. I returned the deli meat to the refrigerator, gently closed the door, wiped my hands on my apron, and smiled. I smiled because, at that moment, I realized something vital. I realized that my daughter no longer viewed me as her mother. She saw me as an obstacle, as someone who was no longer needed. A person who needed to be removed from the picture. I felt a smile form because I realized that if they were going to treat me like this, I would take charge of my own choices as well. "I'm heading to my room. Enjoy your meal." I proceeded toward the stairs. I sensed their gaze piercing into my back, yet I chose not to look back. I ascended each step with my back straight and my chin up, although I was shaking inside. Upon entering my room, I shut the door behind me. I settled onto the edge of the bed. This was the same bed where I had shared countless nights with my husband, Frank, during 3 decades, where I had wept when he passed away a decade ago, where I found myself utterly alone until Jade persuaded me to move in with her. "This is your home, too, Mom. You will always have a spot with us." That's what she said to me 2 years back when I sold my little house to assist her with the down payment for this one. When I invested all my savings into this place that was meant to belong to both of us, to the family. So we could have a space to be together. Deceit. It was all deceit. I stood up and walked to the window. From there, I could see the garden, the roses I had planted on my own, the young lemon tree I added when I arrived here, and the pots of herbs I cared for every morning. I did everything with my own hands and effort. Downstairs, I could hear laughter, music, and the doorbell ringing. The in-laws had come. I heard Jade welcoming them with that cheerful tone she no longer used with me. I heard Marcus offering them refreshments. I heard the sound of dishes, the clinking of glasses, and here I was alone in my room, like a child sent to their room, as if I had done something wrong. Yet my only fault was providing the food they were now enjoying. I sat down in my favorite chair by the window, the one I had brought from my old house, the only piece of furniture Jade allowed me to keep. Everything else was sold or given away because, according to her, this house had its own character and my old belongings didn't fit. I took my phone out of my pocket. I paused for a moment, considering dialing my sister, Tanya, to share what had occurred. But what would I say? That my own daughter had told me I couldn't eat in my own house. It would seem absurd. It would make me sound like I was overreacting, like a dramatic elderly woman craving attention. I put the phone back and sat there quietly, gazing out the window as the sky became darker. Time moved on. I noticed when the in-laws departed. I noticed when Jade and Marcus headed to their room. I noticed when all sounds disappeared. Then I quietly moved down the stairs, being very quiet. The house was dim, apart from the little light above the stove. I entered the kitchen. I noticed dirty dishes stacked in the sink, wine glasses with leftover marks, and remnants of food on the countertop. My meal, the meal I purchased and paid for. and I hadn't had even a single morsel. I opened the fridge searching for something to munch on, but nearly everything was missing. Almost all of it had been consumed. Just a few random leftovers sat in containers. I picked one up. It was cold rice. I ate it right there, standing in front of the open fridge, its light shining on my weary face. While I ate that cold rice, I realized something else. I realized that this situation wasn't new. This had been occurring gradually, so subtly that I hadn't noticed, much like a frog in slowly heated water that doesn't jump out until it's too late. Minor insults, remarks, those glances, all of it had been part of a scheme to push me aside, to make me feel like I was unnecessary, like I was a burden, that I should feel thankful for having shelter. But that shelter belonged to me as well. I contributed $50,000 toward its purchase. All of my savings, everything Frank and I accumulated over the years. I gave it to Jade. I had faith in her because she was my daughter, because I believed she would look after me as I had looked after her. I shut the refrigerator, rinsed the empty container, and stored it away. I tidied up any sign that I had been there, like a spirit, like someone who had no claim to exist in her own home. I returned to my room. I laid down, but sleep eluded me. Throughout the night, I reflected, trying to connect the dots. The past 6 months felt odd. Jade asked me to sign documents that were said to be from the bank, renewals, forms, dull stuff I didn't completely understand. And I signed them because I believed in her. After all, she was my daughter. But now I questioned what I had signed exactly. What were those papers? Why was Jade always so urgent? Why was she always in a rush? Why couldn't I take the time to read them properly? I got up before sunrise. I left my room quietly. I went downstairs to the living room. I checked the desk where Jade kept important documents, but it was locked. I searched for the key in all the obvious spots, but it was nowhere to be found. Then I returned to my room and took out my box of personal documents. I sought the original deed to the house, the paperwork that showed I invested my money here, that this house was mine too. It was missing. The deed wasn't where I had stored it. I looked through all the papers and folders, but there was nothing to be found. Everything had vanished. In that instant, I understood. I understood with complete assurance that I had been robbed. My own daughter had taken not just my peace and dignity, but also my money, my future, and my sense of safety. I sat on the floor of my room with my documents scattered around me. I did not cry. I did not shout. I didn't cause a commotion. I understood that crying wouldn't help me get anything back, that shouting would only make me seem like a mad old woman, and that no one would believe me if I began blaming them without proof. So, I chose a different approach. I decided I would be clever. I would investigate. I would reclaim what was mine, quietly, without anyone knowing about my discovery of their deception. I reorganized all my papers. I washed my face, brushed my hair, and dressed as I normally would. When Jade came down for breakfast, I was already in the kitchen preparing coffee. "Good morning, Mom." "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" "Yes, very well, thank you." She smiled, a perfect smile, as if nothing had ever happened, as if she hadn't embarrassed me the previous night, as if she hadn't taken everything from me. I smiled back, too. Because now I understood how to play her game. The game of silence, the game of patience. The game of biding my time until the moment was right to act. I poured her coffee, made her favorite breakfast, and inquired about her plans for the day. I acted like the ideal mother, the obedient woman she expected me to be. But inside, I was already scheming. I was contemplating each step, each action, about how I would regain my life, my home, my dignity. Because if I've learned anything over the last 69 years, it is that revenge is best if it is served cold, very cold. And I had all the time I needed to prepare it. There are points in life when you question when everything started to shift, at what exact moment the person you cared for turned into a stranger. I pondered that question many times in the subsequent days, and I always reached the same conclusion. It had all begun much earlier than I was willing to acknowledge. Jade entered the world when I was 26. My pregnancy was challenging. I was on bed rest for the last 4 months. My husband, Frank, worked extra shifts at the factory to compensate for my inability to work. We were young. We had ambitions. We had dreams. And when she arrived, everything felt right. She was a lovely baby with large, dark eyes and a smile that brightened any space. I cared for her as if she were fragile. I provided her meals, helped her get clean, and sang her the songs my mom had taught me. Frank loved her dearly. He would come home drained from his job, yet he always managed to find time to engage with her and bring out her smile. I vividly recall the moment she took her first steps. I was in the kitchen cooking dinner when she grabbed the sofa and moved forward. She made 3 shaky steps before tumbling down, but she had succeeded. Tears of joy filled my eyes. I called Frank at his workplace to share the news. He left earlier than usual just to witness her walk again. We were joyful. Though we didn't have much money, we resided in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment. Our furniture was used. The carpet was old and frayed. Still, it was our space, and that was sufficient. When Jade turned 5, she began kindergarten. To help with the bills, I took a part-time job at a nearby bakery. Frank continued to work at the factory. We put in a lot of effort and saved what we could. We dreamed of owning a house one day, of providing Jade with all the things we had missed out on. She was an excellent student, bringing home good reports, taking part in school performances, and making friends. She seemed like a typical, happy kid, or at least that's what I thought. Looking back, I realize I missed some important signs. Small things I overlooked because I didn't want to accept there might be issues where I believed everything was fine. For instance, when she was 8, I asked her to let our neighbor's daughter play with her toys. She said no, put all of her toys away, and locked her door. I assumed it was just a typical phase all kids go through when they can be selfish. I spoke with her about why sharing is important. She nodded, yet she never let her things be shared. Then, when she was 12, she discovered $100 I had hidden for emergencies. She asked if she could use it to buy a dress she wanted. I refused, saying that money was reserved for something necessary. She got upset and didn't speak to me for 3 days. When she eventually talked to me again, it was like nothing had happened. However, the money was gone. I never located it, and she never brought it up again. I should have recognized the signs then. I should have been more observant. But I was so consumed with work, too exhausted at the end of the day, and focused on just getting by that I overlooked the indications. Frank passed away when Jade was 19. It was a sudden heart attack while he was working. He fell down in the middle of his shift. By the time he arrived at the hospital, it was already too late. I received the phone call at 3 in the afternoon. That day marked a division in my life, a time before and a time after, a reality with Frank and a reality without him. At the funeral, Jade did not shed a tear. This caught me off guard. She remained serious and quiet, showing no emotion. I checked in on her, asking if she was okay. She replied that she was just trying to process everything and that she might cry later. However, I never witnessed her crying for her father. The upcoming years were challenging. Frank's life insurance was enough to cover the funeral costs and leave us with a small savings. I continued working at the bakery, but I also took up house cleaning on weekends. I needed extra income for Jade's college expenses. She aspired to study business administration, which was costly, but I was ready to do whatever was necessary. I sold Frank's tools and his car. I also parted with some jewelry I had saved, all to cover her tuition, purchase her books, and provide her with money for transportation and meals. I reduced my food intake. I wore the same clothes for years. I refrained from buying anything unnecessary. Everything was for her. Everything. During her college years, Jade only came home when she required money. She would call me to say she faced unexpected expenses, needed to contribute to a project, or had to cover a special fee. I gave her whatever she needed without hesitation, without doubt, because she was my daughter and I believed I was investing in her future. She graduated with honors, and I attended the ceremony. The audience was filled with emotion, celebrating with tears of joy. It felt rewarding. All the sacrifices seemed to pay off, or so I believed. She quickly landed a job at a major corporate company with a good salary. She told me it was now her turn to take care of me and she would repay all I had done for her many times over. I trusted her. I had to hold on to the belief that my sacrifices had significance, but as months went by, nothing changed. She continued to request money for a course, for a business trip, for professional attire, and I kept providing it because that is who I was, who I had always been, the one who gives, the one who sacrifices, the one who prioritizes others over herself. She met Marcus at her workplace. She introduced him to me 6 months after they began dating. He was courteous and well-dressed. He came from a wealthy background, working at the same company as Jade. He appeared to be a good person, and I was pleased for her. I believed she had at last found someone who would bring her joy. They got married the next year in a grand ceremony at an exquisite ballroom with more than 200 attendees. I contributed my portion, which amounted to $15,000 that I withdrew from my savings. Jade insisted it was the least I could contribute since the groom's family was covering much more, and she didn't want to appear inadequate. So, I gave the money, even though it represented many years of labor and sacrifice. At the wedding, she hardly noticed my presence. She was occupied with her husband's family and the notable guests. We exchanged only a couple of words. She referred to me simply as her mother and hurried on, treating me like a formality, something to tick off a list. In the early months of their marriage, they resided in a tiny apartment. I would come over on Sundays, bringing food, tidying up a bit, doing what I could, but I constantly felt like I was intruding, like they would rather I stayed away. Then they began discussing purchasing a home. Marcus wanted a larger place in a nicer area, but they lacked enough funds for the down payment. They required $50,000. Then they turned to me. "Mom, you have savings, right? Could you lend us the money for the house? We can repay you gradually with interest if that suits you. Plus, you could stay with us and you wouldn't have to be on your own anymore. It would be wonderful, like a family again." Jade told me this, and I wanted to have faith in her words. I longed to believe that she wanted me to be part of her life, that she was giving me a spot in her home, that she finally recognized my worth. I sold my house, the little one Frank and I bought after years of hard work, the place where we raised Jade and enjoyed happiness. I sold it and handed her the entire amount, the full $50,000. She assured me my name would be included on the deed. She promised that the house would belong to us both, that I would have my own room and my own space, that I would always be invited. I signed every document they presented to me because I had faith in her. After all, she was my daughter. But now I see that was the moment I sealed my fate, the point when I lost everything, when I ceased to be the master of my own life, and became an unwelcome visitor in what should have been my home. The initial months in the new house were bearable. Jade continued to keep up appearances. She would greet me in the mornings, involved me in various discussions, permitted me to prepare meals, and take part in the choices made in the home. Yet there was an odd feeling, something I couldn't quite place, a silent unease that lingered each time I stepped into a room. Marcus worked late hours. He returned home exhausted and isolated himself in his office. Jade spent a lot of time on her phone. I kept myself occupied with tasks like cleaning, cooking, and tending to the garden, attempting to be helpful, attempting to validate my existence in this house, which also belonged to me, though it seemed less and less like it was mine. One day, I stumbled upon some documents on the dining table. They were financial papers. I noticed them accidentally while tidying up. I did not aim to invade anyone's privacy, but I saw my name on one of the sheets, and it piqued my interest. It was a paper regarding the mortgage of the house. I skimmed through it quickly to make sense of it. There were figures and legal language that I did not completely understand, but one detail stood out. My name did not appear as a homeowner on the deed. I was only mentioned as a reference, someone who had provided money but not as an owner. A chill ran down my spine. I grasped the paper with shaky hands. I reread it slowly, searching for my name in the list of owners, but it was absent. Only Jade Johnson Sterling and Marcus Sterling were listed. Nobody else. I heard footsteps approaching from upstairs. I hurriedly placed the document back and resumed cleaning. Jade walked into the room and regarded me with that look she often wore, a blend of irritation and superiority. "What are you doing, Mom?" "Just cleaning, dear, just cleaning." She took the documents from the table and left without saying anything else. I stood there with a cloth in my hand, heart pounding, and a flood of questions in my mind. That night, sleep eluded me. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had discovered. Perhaps I had misinterpreted it. Maybe my name was included on other papers. Jade had assured me she would include me on the original deed, that the house would be shared between us. She wouldn't lie to me. She couldn't lie to me. Yet doubt took root, like a weed, growing and tainting all my thoughts. In the days that followed, I began to observe more closely, noticing aspects I had previously ignored. For instance, there were times when Jade asked me to sign documents without letting me properly review them. She would claim they were bank paperwork, renewals, dull matters that weren't worth my time, and I would sign, believing her since she was my daughter. But now those signatures haunted me. What had I actually signed? What type of documents were they? Why was there always such a sense of urgency? Why couldn't I take the time to read? One afternoon, when Jade was at work, I rummaged through the living room desk. I had to locate the property deed. It was essential for me to verify that my name was listed there. I wanted to assure myself that my worries were unfounded. However, the desk was secured. I searched for the key in the usual spots, the kitchen drawer, the bookshelf, and the shelf at the entrance, but I found nothing. The key was nowhere to be seen. I attempted to pick the lock with a paperclip and a hairpin, but that failed. The desk stayed locked, keeping its contents from me. Then I recalled that I had my own set of documents. After selling my house, I stored everything in a designated box. It included vital papers, Frank's marriage and death certificates, payment receipts, and the deed for this property that proved my investment here. I went to my bedroom and retrieved the box from beneath my bed. With shaking hands, I opened it. I rummaged through all the documents, checking each one, every folder, and each envelope. The deed was absent. It was nowhere to be found. Instead, there was a receipt that showed I had transferred $50,000 to Jade's account, but nothing else. No paper that confirmed my ownership of the house. Sitting on the floor surrounded by the scattered papers, I tried to recall when I had last seen the deed and where I might have put it. Who else could have entered my room? Then it hit me. Jade had access to my room with the key I had given her so she could clean when I was out or use the bathroom if hers was occupied. I never imagined she would take advantage of it to steal from me, but now it seemed clear. She must have come in, gone through my belongings, and taken the one document that safeguarded my ownership, and either destroyed it or hid it away. I returned all the papers to the box, locked it, and relocated it to a different spot in my closet, behind some old boxes where no one would look. That evening, Jade arrived home late from work, carrying a shopping bag from an upscale store, filled with new clothes and shoes worth hundreds of dollars. I watched her happily unpack in her room, removing tags and trying on outfits in front of the mirror, looking joyful and carefree. I reflected on my $50,000, realizing that it represented years of my life, hard work and sacrifices. Getting up early, staying up late, skimping on meals to save money, avoiding personal treats and living minimally, all in pursuit of security and independence, to avoid being a burden to anyone. And now, that money was funding her lavish wardrobe, her comfortable lifestyle, and her beautiful home, while I was left with nothing. Just a space they could remove at their convenience. Just a seat at a table where my presence was becoming increasingly unwelcome. I headed to the kitchen to prepare some tea. I required something to soothe my anxious feelings. Clear thoughts were essential. I set water to heat. I retrieved my cherished mug, the one I had taken from my previous home. It was a plain white ceramic cup adorned with painted flowers. Frank had gifted it to me on our first anniversary. While waiting for the water to reach a boil, Marcus walked into the kitchen. He gazed at me in that way he had started to adopt, as if I were an annoyance, as though my existence bothered him. "Gloria, I need to speak with you." I turned to face him. I waited for him to elaborate. "Jade and I have been considering our expenses, and this house is quite costly to maintain. The bills, the taxes, everything seems to be rising. And well, you reside here, but you don't contribute anything. You consume our food, use our electricity, and take showers. All these expenses come out of our finances." His remarks struck me like buckets of icy water. Here I was, someone who had just filled the fridge with $200 worth of food. Here I was, the one who cleaned the entire house, who cooked meals, who cared for the garden, who did everything possible to avoid being a burden. Yet I remained silent. I merely stared at him, waiting for him to conclude. "So, we believe it's fair for you to pay something, a monthly rent. It's not a lot, just $500 to assist with expenses. It's the least you can do, really. Any room in this area costs double that. $500 to stay in a house that I helped purchase, in a home where I invested all my funds, in a place that was supposedly mine as well. Of course, Marcus, I will consider it. There's not much to ponder, Gloria. It will begin next month. Jade will provide you with the specifics." He filled a glass with water. He drank it slowly. He watched me as if he expected me to respond, to object, to decline. But I stayed quiet and still, holding my empty mug. Once he left, I turned off the stove. I no longer wanted tea. I no longer desired anything. I simply wanted to retreat to my room, lock the door, and digest everything that had transpired. I ascended the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. I entered my room and shut the door. Sat on my bed, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed the tears to flow. I wept quietly, my face hidden in my hands, my body shaking. I cried for my innocence, for my foolishness, for placing so much trust, for giving everything without safeguarding myself, for believing that a mother's affection was sufficient. But after a time, the tears subsided and something else emerged, something icy, something rigid. Something I was unaware existed within me. Anger. But not the fiery anger that makes you shout, the icy anger that prompts you to think, the anger that strategizes, the one that waits, the one that acts at the exact moment needed. I stood up, washed my face, and looked at my reflection. I saw a 69-year-old woman, weary, with wrinkles, with gray hair, but with alert eyes, filled with resolve. I wasn't going to sit passively. I wasn't going to allow them to take advantage of me like this. I wasn't going to let them treat me like garbage. I had given too much. I had made too many sacrifices, and now it was time to reclaim what belonged to me. The days that followed felt unusual. I continued my routine as normal. I woke up early, made breakfast, cleaned the home, took care of the garden, but something had shifted within me. I no longer did it out of love. I acted with purpose. Every action was planned, every word calculated, every smile insincere. Jade noticed nothing. Or perhaps she simply didn't care. She carried on with her life, her job, her social activities, her shopping. She regarded me like a piece of furniture, something present but not worthy of consideration. And I allowed her to think that because it suited me. I needed them to let their guard down. I began to observe everything more closely. Their schedules, their habits when they left. When they came back, where they stored important items, what discussions they had when they assumed I wasn't listening. One morning, while tidying the living room, I found Jade's phone on the couch. She had left it behind in her rush to get to work. I stared at it for a moment. I knew her password. I had watched her enter it countless times, 4 simple numbers, her wedding anniversary. I picked up the phone. I unlocked it. My hands shook, but my mind was focused. I accessed her messages. I looked for chats with Marcus, her friends, her family. I read quickly, mentally noting everything. There was a conversation with her friend Samantha. Recent messages. I read them, my heart racing. I'm almost finished getting my mom off the title. The lawyer says everything will be settled in 2 weeks. Finally, I'll be able to sell this house and buy something better with her unable to make any claims. The words hit me like a punch. I went over the message repeatedly, trying to make sense of it. She hadn't merely removed me from the deed. She intended to sell the house that I helped purchase and acquire another one that I wouldn't have any claim to. I continued to read on. There were additional messages from weeks prior. My mom is incredibly trusting. She approves everything I present to her without even glancing at it. Now, there's just one last document required, and that will resolve everything. The issue was me. I was her problem, the very person who gave her life, who nurtured her, who dedicated everything for her well-being. To her, I was just an obstacle that needed addressing. I captured screenshots of all the messages on my phone. My hands trembled so much that some turned out unclear, but I took multiple pictures of each one. I required evidence. I needed a record of it all. There was another conversation with someone named Keith Thompson, a name that was unfamiliar to me. I opened that chat. Ms. Sterling, as I noted last week, we've processed the documents you provided. Your mother has signed the waiver of rights to the property. Everything looks fine. We just need her to sign one final document to complete the process. You can visit the office anytime. A lawyer. She consulted a lawyer. She had falsified documents. She made me sign my own downfall without my awareness. I noted down the lawyer's name, their contact number, and the office address that was mentioned in the chat. Every detail, every word was recorded. I kept searching. There were images, scanned files, copies of forms I had signed without carefully reading them, contracts, waivers, and rights assignments, all neatly saved on her phone as if they were trophies of her treachery. I took pictures of everything, one by one. I ensured that they were clear and that every word was easy to read. This was invaluable. This was the evidence I needed to demonstrate what they had done to me. I heard a car enter the driveway and my heart raced. I peeked out the window. It was just the neighbor. I kept checking the phone, knowing I had limited time. I was unsure when Jade would come back. I found a folder titled Mom Documents. I opened it and discovered copies of my identification, my birth certificate, the deed to my previous home, and the transfer slips for the finances. Everything necessary for them to steal from me was organized neatly, as if it were a criminal file. Then I noticed something else. A recent document, an estimate for a new house in a different neighborhood, larger and pricier, dated from the previous week. They were already seeking a new place to live. They were already making plans to leave me homeless. I captured photos of everything. After that, I erased the call and message history, so she wouldn't realize I had accessed her phone. I placed it back precisely in the spot where I had found it, at the same angle and position. I then made my way to my room, shut the door behind me, sat down on the bed, and linked my phone to my old laptop, the one I had brought from my previous residence. I moved all the pictures over. I stored them in a concealed folder. I created duplicates on a USB drive I had kept out of sight. I couldn't afford to lose that proof. As I was transferring the files, I reflected on everything I had witnessed, realizing how my own daughter had coldly plotted my downfall with such careful strategy, as if I were merely an obstacle in her way, something to be eliminated to clear her path forward. After I finished saving everything, I placed the USB drive in a secure spot inside a box of tampons in the bathroom. No one would think to search there, especially not Marcus. I headed to the kitchen, put water on the stove to heat up, and prepared my tea. My hands had steadied. I felt strangely composed. I gained clarity on what I was up against. I understood the extent of the betrayal, and that understanding empowered me because knowledge brings strength, and now I possessed both. That afternoon, when Jade returned from her job, she was in a panic. She was frantically looking for something. "Mom, have you seen my phone?" she asked. "No, dear, where did you last have it?" I responded. "I'm not sure. I had it this morning but can't find it." I assisted her in the search. We looked in the living room, the kitchen, and her bedroom. I acted worried and supportive, like the ideal mother she believed I was. "Here it is," I said. It was wedged between the sofa cushions. She retrieved it with a sigh of relief. She hurriedly checked her messages and calls. Everything appeared okay. She remained oblivious. Why would she suspect anything? I was merely her unsuspecting mother, the gullible old lady who signed whatever was put in front of her. "Thanks, Mom." "You're welcome, dear." She headed to her room. I lingered in the living room, gazing out the window, noticing the sky turning dark. However, I no longer felt adrift. I no longer perceived myself as a victim. Now I had a clear plan. I spent the next few days doing research. I looked online for the lawyer, Keith Thompson. I found his site. His office was a 30-minute drive from my location. I read about the services he provided: real estate, wills, contracts. Exactly what Jade needed to deceive me. I also searched for information regarding my rights and what steps I could take if I had been fooled into signing papers. I read through legal articles, forums, and stories from others who experienced similar issues. I took notes and saved links. I got myself ready. One afternoon, while Jade and Marcus were at work, I visited the bank where we had arranged the mortgage for the house. I requested to speak with a banker. A young woman in her 30s greeted me with a friendly smile. "Good morning, ma'am. How may I assist you today? I'm looking for details about a property. I'm a co-owner, but I don't possess a copy of the documents. I want to find out how I can obtain them." She requested my identification. I provided it to her. She entered some information into her computer, then frowned. "Miss Johnson, our records show that you are not listed as the owner of any property. That can't be true." I contributed $50,000 towards the down payment on a house. I have the transfer receipt. I presented the receipt I had kept. She examined it. She continued typing on her computer. "I see the transfer mentioned here, but it was made under Jade Sterling's name and not as part of a co-ownership deal. It was categorized as a gift, a donation. Thus, you do not possess any rights to the property." Her statement confirmed my deepest fears. They had deceived me from the very beginning. There was never any intention to include my name on the deed. It was all a scheme to take my money. What can I do about this? "You need to speak with a lawyer, ma'am. We only manage the financial aspects. But if you sign documents giving up your rights, it would be challenging to recover anything." I expressed my gratitude and left the bank, heading towards a bench in the nearby park. I took a seat and inhaled deeply. The chilly air filled my lungs and cleared my mind. Now I understood 3 important things. First, I had been legally robbed. Second, I possessed evidence of the conspiracy. Third, I required the help of a competent attorney, one who wasn't aligned with Jade. I pulled out my phone and looked for lawyers who specialize in family fraud cases. I discovered several options. I checked their reviews, compared their fees, and noted down contact information. I would make a call the following day. I was no longer facing this alone. Now I had facts. I had proof. I had a strategy. I made my way home slowly, considering every step I took. Jade and Marcus had not yet returned. The house was void of noise, still like a stage awaiting the performance to begin. And I was prepared, poised to act, determined to reclaim what was rightfully mine, ready to show them they had misjudged me. The following day, I waited for Jade and Marcus to leave for their jobs. I dressed meticulously. I picked my best outfit, a simple yet elegant dress. I styled my hair and applied light makeup. I aimed to appear respectable, reliable, like someone worth believing. I grabbed my purse. Inside, I organized all the evidence I had gathered, including printed photos, receipts, and a USB drive containing all the data from Jade's phone, all sorted into a folder. I exited my home and made my way to the bus stop. The journey to the city center lasted 40 minutes. Throughout the ride, I gazed out the window, observing the streets, the buildings, and the people occupied with their daily routines. I reflected on how I reached this stage in my life, transitioning from being a homeowner to seeking justice. The lawyer's office, I discovered, was located in an aged building. I ascended the stairs to the 3rd level. Each step made my knees ache, but I pressed on because this mattered. This was about my future. I knocked on the door and was met by a secretary. I informed her that I required an immediate legal consultation. She asked me to wait in a small waiting area. There were outdated magazines on a table, simple pictures hanging on the walls, yet the environment appeared tidy, organized, and professional. After a wait of 20 minutes, I was summoned. I walked into an office where a 50-year-old man awaited me. He had gray hair, glasses, and wore a plain suit. He kindly motioned for me to sit down. "Ms. Johnson, I'm attorney Charles Reed. Please tell me what brings you here." I shared my story from the very start. I explained how I sold my house, how I provided them with $50,000, how they assured me I would be included in the deed, how they got me to sign documents without allowing me to read them, and how I found out about their deceit. While talking, I laid out all the papers, photos, and evidence. He quietly listened, taking notes. Examined each document I presented to him. His demeanor was serious and focused. He didn't cut me off at any point. He allowed me to express everything I had kept inside. After I finished, there was a lengthy pause. He continued to look through the papers, reviewing the images of Jade's texts multiple times. Then he addressed me. "Ms. Johnson, this is a case of fraud, a breach of trust, and possibly forgery of documents. Your daughter and son-in-law could face substantial criminal charges. I just want to reclaim my money or my rights to the house, whichever is fair." He replied, "I understand, but I must be truthful with you. This will be challenging. You signed documents relinquishing your rights. Even if you didn't fully grasp what you were signing, your signature is still there, which complicates matters. But I have evidence that they deceived me. The messages, our conversations, it's all documented. Yes, and that is encouraging. This shows intent to defraud and premeditated actions. This supports our case. We can initiate a lawsuit for fraud and to void the documents, yet I need you to be aware that this may take time. It could last several months, possibly a year or more." My hope dwindled slightly. A year? Could I endure another year in that home? Facing the disdain, the embarrassment, paying for something that should belong to me? How much would this all cost? My charges amount to $200 every hour. For a situation like this, we're estimating around $10,000 total, possibly more if it turns out to be complex. I didn't have that amount. I only had roughly $5,000 saved up, which was the end of all my hard work. He must have seen how I felt because he added, "I can accommodate you, Ms. Johnson. I can accept a retainer of $3,000. We can clear the remaining balance once we win the case and you get your money back. However, I need to clarify that if we lose, you would still owe me the full amount. It was a gamble, but what options did I really have? Remain silent and lose everything, or fight and possibly gain something back? I agree. What should I do next? First, I will require you to sign an agreement with me. After that, we will request all property documents from the county recorder's office. We will ask for certified copies of everything your daughter submitted and will draft a formal lawsuit. How long will that take? Around a month to gather everything. Then we'll submit the lawsuit. Your daughter and her husband will receive notice. They'll need to respond. That's when things will get interesting. They will know it was me. They will know that I sued them. Yes, there's no way to avoid that. But Ms. Johnson, you have the right to stand up for yourself, to fight for what belongs to you. Don't allow fear to hold you back now. He was correct. I had already come this far. I had uncovered the truth. I already had the proof. I couldn't back out now. I signed the agreement. I wrote him a check for $3,000, nearly all that was left in my account. He provided me with a copy of everything. He outlined the next steps. He assured me he would update me on all developments. When I left his office, I felt odd, anxious, but also relieved. I had finally taken a step. I was no longer just a victim hopping for an improvement. Now I was a fighter. I traveled home quietly, contemplating what was ahead, how they would react upon receiving the lawsuit notification, what they would say, and what actions they would take. I reached home before they did. I changed my clothes, hid my documents in a secret place, and began to prepare dinner as though nothing had occurred, as if it were just a regular day. When they got home, I welcomed them as usual. Jade hardly acknowledged me. Marcus didn't even reply to my greeting. We had dinner in silence, each in our own thoughts. I watched them closely, taking note of every detail, every disdainful gesture. Every instance of embarrassment strengthened my resolve. The next few days felt like a waiting period. Attorney Reed contacted me weekly to provide updates. He had asked for the necessary documents from the county recorder. He was assessing everything and formulating the legal approach. He requested my patience. In the meantime, I continued to keep track of everything at home. Each time Jade mistreated me, every remark, every offense. I began to discreetly record conversations on my phone without their knowledge. I wasn't sure if these would hold any legal weight, but I wanted a record of everything. One day, I received a certified envelope in the mail. It came from the county recorder's office, containing the papers that the attorney had asked for. I grabbed it before anyone else saw. I concealed it in my room. That evening, I opened it with shaky hands. Inside were copies of everything, including the deed to the house, which only had Jade's and Marcus's names on it, along with the documents I had signed, giving up rights I was unaware I had. Everything was documented, showing my ignorance and how they had taken advantage of me. But there was more: discrepancies, mismatched dates, and signatures that appeared different. The attorney had flagged several sections with sticky notes. This is helpful. We can use this. Possible forgery. A glimmer of hope ignited within me. Perhaps there was a possibility. Perhaps I could prevail. 3 more weeks went by. Attorney Reed arranged a meeting at his office. Upon my arrival, he had everything set out on his desk. A neatly stacked pile of papers, legal documents, and a prepared lawsuit. Ms. Johnson, we are ready. I will submit the lawsuit tomorrow. In 2 or 3 days, your daughter and son-in-law will receive the notification. Be prepared for their response. It will not be pleasant. I understand. I am prepared. I must also inform you that they may attempt to scare you, pressure you to pull back the lawsuit, or threaten you with eviction from the house. If that happens, contact me right away. We have legal measures to safeguard you. I expressed my gratitude. I exited his office feeling a blend of anxiety and determination. In 2 days, everything would change. In 2 days, there would be no going back. That night, I hardly slept. I considered all the possible scenarios, all the ways this could fail. Yet I also reflected on justice, on reclaiming my self-worth, on proving that they couldn't just take from me and escape scot-free. The attorney submitted the lawsuit on a Friday. He called to confirm, "It's done, Ms. Johnson. Now we wait." The weekend stretched endlessly. Each time the doorbell rang, my heart raced, but nothing occurred. Jade and Marcus carried on with their routine, unaware of what was ahead. On Monday morning, the postal worker showed up and rang the doorbell. I opened the entrance. He had 2 certified letters, one addressed to Jade Sterling and the other to Marcus Sterling, regarding a lawsuit for fraud and document invalidation. I signed for them. I stared at the letters for a long moment. This was the defining moment, the point of no reversal. I could conceal them, toss them out, act as if they never showed up. Alternatively, I could leave them where Jade would come across them and deal with the fallout. I set them on the dining table in plain sight where they were sure to be noticed, then headed to my room to brace myself for the impending upheaval. Jade returned home from her job at 6 o'clock in the evening. I heard her unlock the door. I could hear her walking in the hallway. Then came the silence, that heavy stillness that arrives right before chaos. "Mom, come down here immediately." Her tone was different, strained and furious, but there was also an undertone of something else, perhaps fear or anxiety. I stood up from my bed, took a deep breath, and made my way downstairs. She was in the living room, one envelope open in her hand, the lawsuit papers in the other. Her face was flushed. Her eyes were filled with anger. Marcus was beside her, clutching his own envelope. He glared at me with complete disdain. "What is this? What on earth is this, Mom?" She articulated each word deliberately, as if trying to maintain her composure while on the verge of exploding. "It's a lawsuit for fraud, for taking my money and my claim to this house." "Took? We didn't take anything from you. You gave us that money. You signed all the papers. Everything was above board. You deceived me. You made me sign things without revealing what they were. You guaranteed me that this house would be mine as well, and you lied. You're out of your mind. You're absolutely out of your mind, old woman. Nobody compelled you to do anything. You wanted to assist us, and now you pull this stunt. I have evidence, Jade. Texts, conversations, everything showing you plotted to sell this house and leave me homeless, where you've told your friends I'm a problem you are removing from the title." Her expression shifted. The color drained from her face for an instant. She looked at me with what might have been fear, yet she quickly masked it with more fury. "You went through my phone. You invaded my privacy. That's a breach of privacy, Mom. That's illegal. And taking from your mother is misleading her, making her sign false documents, seizing all she possesses. That's acceptable in your eyes." Marcus stepped closer. His expression was stern, menacing. He positioned himself very near me, trying to intimidate me with his height. "Pay attention, Gloria. You need to drop this lawsuit immediately, or you will be leaving this house today, tonight, with nothing at all. Go find out where you will stay. Go see who will welcome you. I'm not leaving. I have a stake in this house as well. I invested money here, and I will fight to reclaim it. Your money, that was a donation, assistance. No one made you give it, and now you come here acting like we are robbers. You are showing no gratitude, after all that we have done for you. What have you ever done for me? You have me paying for a place I own. You won't let me eat the food I purchase. You treat me like I'm worthless. That's your contribution to my life." Jade let out a harsh, joyless laugh. "You know what, Mom? Do what you must. Take us to court. Fight as hard as you wish, but I'll tell you this, you will not prevail. We have stronger attorneys than you. We have resources. We have time. And when you ultimately lose, you will be left empty-handed. No home, no funds. No respect. I have no respect remaining. You took that away from me. But I intend to reclaim everything else, even if it takes all I have. Go to your room. I don't want to look at you. You make me sick." Though her words cut deep, I remained stoic. I kept my expression neutral, my posture straight, and I ascended the stairs without glancing back. That night, I heard them contact lawyer Keith Thompson. I caught bits of their conversation through the walls. They were anxious, unsettled. The attorney was saying things they didn't want to hear. I heard Jade shout and Marcus swear. I stayed awake late, listening closely, mentally recording every detail. This was merely the start. I knew they would scheme again, something even worse, and I needed to be ready. The following days were filled with tension. Jade and Marcus hardly spoke to me. When they did, it was solely to belittle me, to call me ungrateful, a traitor, a poor mother. Yet during their attacks, I noticed something curious. Jade was still posting on her social media, sharing pictures from fancy restaurants, spas, and clothing boutiques, smiling, posing, acting as though her life was flawless, buying peace at my expense. Sometimes you must distance yourself from negativity to shine. That was part of a post displaying her sipping wine in a classy location. She received 120 likes, and her friends commented on how strong she was. How amazing, how courageous. I considered the irony of it all, how the negativity she spoke of was me, her mother, the woman who gave up everything for her. Now I was the negativity to steer clear of. But I continued to observe. I kept taking screenshots of each post, every comment, every showcase of her lavish lifestyle funded by my sacrifices. One afternoon while they were gone, Attorney Reed called. "Ms. Johnson, I have updates for you. Your daughter's lawyer has submitted a reply to our legal action. They reject all claims. They assert that you provided the funds willingly as a present, that you signed all papers knowingly, and that now you feel remorseful and want to take back what you already gifted. That was anticipated. What comes next? The next step is the discovery stage. Both sides will share all the information we possess, documents, witness statements, proof. After that, the judge will determine if there is a strong enough case for a trial. How long will this process take? It will take at least 3 to 4 months. However, Ms. Johnson, I need to inform you of something crucial. Your daughter's attorney reached out to me. He is interested in discussing settling this without going to court. What type of settlement is being proposed? They are suggesting that you receive $20,000 if you agree to drop the lawsuit and sign a paper giving up any future claims to the property. $20,000 from the $50,000 I invested. That is less than half. Exactly. It is a disappointing offer, even insulting, but it is still something, and it would help avoid years of legal battles, stress, and costs. No, I will not accept it. I desire everything that is rightfully mine regarding the house. I will not settle for anything less, I understand. I just wanted you to be aware of the proposal, but if you wish to proceed, we will continue the fight. We will not back down. That is my goal, all the way to the end. I ended the call feeling empowered. Resolute, they underestimated my resolve, thinking I would accept their meager offer as if it was enough for what they took from me. They were mistaken, especially that night at dinner when Jade brought up the settlement as though it were small talk. Mom, our lawyer spoke with yours. We proposed $20,000 to close this matter. You should agree. It would be in everyone's best interest, and I refuse to accept it. I want what is mine. Nothing belongs to you, Mom. We have already told you that the money was a gift, but we are being kind. We are giving you something that you don't even have a right to receive. Then why extend the offer if you're so convinced I have no rights to anything? She went silent. Marcus stepped in. Because we want to end this spectacle, because it is embarrassing, and because you're making a fool of yourself. Take the money and find somewhere else to live. Leave us alone. I will not leave. And I will not settle for less than what I am entitled to. Jade slammed her fork down on her plate. The clatter broke the silence. You are impossible. You are stubborn and selfish. You have always been this way, only thinking of yourself. You never thought of others. Her comments left me speechless. How could she say that? How could she distort the truth in such a way? I, who devoted my entire life, who sacrificed everything, who never expected anything in exchange, and now I was being selfish for wanting back what they took from me. I remained silent. I stood up from the table, cleared my plate, and headed to my room as I realized that staying would lead me to say things I might regret, things that could be turned against me. In the following weeks, it was much the same, with them attempting to pressure me, trying to convince me to withdraw the lawsuit, threatening to evict me, to cut off my utilities, to make my life a nightmare. At the same time, Jade kept posting on social media about her flawless life, sharing how she had learned to set limits, to safeguard her mental health, to distance herself from harmful people. I have realized that I don't have obligations to anyone, not even family. My mental well-being is a priority, and if that involves severing connections, then I will do so without feeling guilty or regretful. That post received 200 likes. Her friends commented on how proud they were of her, saying she was strong and mature. I wondered if they understood the truth, if they realized the toxic person she referred to was her mother, the one who brought her into the world. But I stayed on my path. I continued to gather evidence. I persisted in working with my attorney. I prepared for what lay ahead because I knew this was far from over, that the toughest part was still to come. And I was correct. 3 months post-lawsuit filing, the date for the initial court hearing came. Attorney Reed had readied me for this occasion. He detailed what to anticipate, how to conduct myself, what to express, and what to avoid saying. Yet nothing could truly prepare me for the feelings that washed over me when I spotted my daughter seated across the courtroom. I had arrived early. I wore my best outfit, a simple suit I had purchased years back for Frank's funeral. I carefully styled my hair. I wanted to present myself as respectable and dignified, like someone who speaks the truth. Jade showed up with Marcus and her attorney, Keith Thompson. She donned an expensive dress, designer shoes, and flawless makeup. She appeared successful and professional, like a victim of a difficult mother, exactly the persona she wanted to convey. Not once did she glance at me as she walked in. She behaved as if I were invisible, as if I didn't exist, which stung far deeper than any insult. The judge entered, and we all rose. He was a man of advanced age, around 60, with a serious expression and thick glasses. He sat down and began to review the case documents. We are gathered here for a lawsuit concerning fraud and the nullification of documents. Ms. Gloria Johnson versus her daughter, Jade Sterling, and her son-in-law, Marcus Sterling. Attorney Reed, please present your case. My lawyer stood up. He spoke clearly and firmly. He detailed how I had sold my house, how I provided $50,000 for the purchase of the new property, how they assured me I would be named on the property title, how they had me sign papers without properly explaining their content, and how I found out they intended to sell the house without informing me. He showed the proof, the messages I retrieved from Jade's device, the documents that contained discrepancies, the transfer slips, all neatly sorted, understandable, and persuasive. The judge examined every item meticulously. He made notes. He posed inquiries. Attorney Reed replied accurately and with assurance. I started to feel a sense of optimism. Next was Attorney Thompson's turn. He rose with a self-assured grin, moving deliberately as if he were already confident of victory. Your Honor, this matter is straightforward. MS. Gloria Johnson opted to assist her daughter in acquiring a house. She did it out of her own free will. No one compelled her. She endorsed all required documents, fully aware of her actions. Now she regrets her decision and wishes to reclaim what she has given up. That isn't fraud. That is simply buyer's remorse. He showcased papers that I had signed, documents where I allegedly relinquished my rights to the asset. My signature was present, unmistakable. I felt lightheaded upon seeing it because I could not recall signing that. Furthermore, Your Honor, Ms. Johnson has resided in the property for 2 years without paying rent. She has enjoyed the perks of living in a $500,000 house without contributing to any costs. And now she has the audacity to sue those who helped her. Benefactors. That term stung, as though they had performed a kind deed for me, like I was a needy person grateful for what they offered. The judge raised his hand to silence him. Attorney Thompson, I am looking at text messages indicating that your client is clearly statting. She is unlawfully removing her mother from the title and intends to sell the property without her knowledge. How do you justify that? Thompson remained unmoved. Private discussions, Your Honor, obtained unlawfully. MS. Johnson invaded my client's privacy by checking her phone without consent. Those messages should not be considered evidence. They were collected by a concerned mother who feared she was being cheated. There was no burglary or theft. She merely inspected a phone that belonged in her own home and uncovered proof of wrongdoing. The judge continued to review the documents. He asked additional questions of both parties. When it was my opportunity, I responded with a shaky yet clear voice. I shared my story, how I trusted my daughter, how I was deceived, how I learned the truth. Jade also spoke with tears in her eyes, her voice trembling. She played the part of the wounded daughter, a victim of a controlling mother who now seeks to exploit her. My mother has always been like this, Your Honor, always trying to control me, always wanting authority over my life. We provided her with a place to stay, gave her everything she needed, and now she is responding with this lawsuit and these terrible claims. It's painful. It's so painful to think that my own mother believes I could steal from her. She performed flawlessly. She cried exactly when it was needed. Her voice shook at the right times. She gazed at the judge with desperate eyes, and I noticed how he looked at her, his expression softening a bit. In that instant, I realized something. I realized that the truth doesn't always prevail. Sometimes it's the person who acts the best, who tells the best lies, or who has the most skilled attorney that ends up winning. The hearing went on for 3 hours. At the conclusion, the judge stated he required additional time to consider all the evidence. He would announce his decision in 2 weeks, and both sides would have to wait for his ruling. We exited the courtroom quietly. Jade and Marcus drove away in their new vehicle. An expensive car worth more than $50,000, purchased after I handed over my money. I took the bus home as I usually do. Lawyer Reed walked me to the bus stop. How do you think it went? Well, Ms. Johnson, it went well. We have solid proof. The judge noticed the discrepancies. He saw the messages. I believe we have a chance, but there was uncertainty in his tone. I could sense it from his voice and his unwillingness to meet my gaze. That uncertainty frightened me. The following 2 weeks were the longest of my entire existence. The mood at home was intolerable. Jade barely spoke to me. Marcus looked at me with clear disdain. I had my meals in my room. I mostly isolated myself, feeling like a ghost in my own home. Still, I continued to document and collect evidence just in case I needed to appeal, in case I had to keep battling. Then that day finally came. Lawyer Reed called me very early in the morning. Ms. Johnson, the judge has made his ruling. My heart sank. I waited. Each second felt like an eternity. We won the initial part. The judge found enough evidence of fraud. He called for a more extensive investigation. And best of all, he ordered that any attempts to sell the property be put on hold until the case is fully resolved. I couldn't believe it. I had achieved something. Not everything, but something. The judge had taken my side. He had recognized the truth. What exactly does this mean? It means that your daughter is unable to sell the house. She cannot take any actions regarding the property without court consent, and it implies that we are heading for a full trial. That's where we will contest the validity of the documents and seek the return of your funds. It was a minor win, but it was still a win. For the first time in several months, I felt a glimmer of hope. When Jade got the alert that day, her response was intense. From my room, I heard her yelling, items crashing, swearing, and Marcus attempting to soothe her. She had lost control. I made my way down the stairs. I had to see her expression. I needed to see that she understood she couldn't just escape this situation so easily. In the living room, she was surrounded by papers strewn about, her face flushed, and her hands balled into fists. This is because of you. Everything is your responsibility. Now we are unable to sell. We can't do anything with this house due to your actions. It's my house as well. I invested my money here and I refuse to allow you to sell it without getting back what I own. I despise you. I really despise you. I wish you had never moved in here. I wish you had stayed at your previous home and left us alone. I was settled in my house. You persuaded me to sell it. You requested the funds. You assured me this would also be my home, and you deceived me. So don't blame me for this. Leave, just go now. I don't want you here. I'm not going anywhere. The judge ruled that you cannot interfere with this property. That also means you can't make me leave. So I'll remain and I will stay until everything is sorted out. I went upstairs before she could reply. I went into my room, locked the door, and for the first time in months, I let myself smile. I had delivered the first significant impact. I had demonstrated that I would not surrender. That I wouldn't allow them to take advantage of me. And even though there was still much to achieve, even though the struggle had merely begun, I had succeeded in this skirmish. And that was sufficient for the moment, enough to keep pushing forward, enough to continue the fight, enough to hold on to the belief that perhaps, just perhaps, justice was real. I sat on my bed, took out my phone, and sent a text to Attorney Reed. I appreciate your faith in me, your willingness to stand up for me, and your commitment to not give up. His reply was prompt. Don't lose hope, Ms. Johnson. We're just beginning and we will prevail. I trusted his words because I had no other option. After all, I had come too far to retreat, as my dignity, my future, my life, everything hinged on this, and I wasn't about to fail. Not now, not after everything I had endured, not after discovering a strength within me that I hadn't known existed. This was my battle, and I was determined to win it at any cost. The coming months turned into an unspoken conflict. Jade and Marcus were unable to forcibly remove me due to the judge's ruling. They could not sell the house either. They were just as confined with me as I was with them, and it drove them insane. They resorted to small, spiteful actions, like refusing to purchase my favorite coffee or the brand of bread I liked. They insisted that if I wanted those items, I had to buy them myself. I complied without a word of complaint, denying them the pleasure of seeing my frustration. They disconnected the internet in my room, saying it was a cost-saving measure, yet their connection was still fully operational. Whenever I needed to use a computer, I went to the public library. I adapted to the situation. They changed the locks on parts of the house like the basement, garage, and study, marking their territory as if to indicate that I was unwelcome. I allowed it because those minor skirmishes were insignificant. The larger battle was still ahead. While they engaged in these immature antics, I continued to collect evidence, keeping a record of everything. Each act of aggression, every effort to complicate my life was documented. All of it was valuable. Attorney Reed was handling my case. He compiled more paperwork and gathered further evidence. He collected statements from neighbors who confirmed my presence at the house, acknowledged my maintenance of the property, and noted my financial contributions. 6 months after the initial hearing, the day for the final trial was scheduled. This time, it would be conclusive. The judge was to determine if the documents I signed were legitimate or if I had been deceived. He would decide if I would regain my money or lose it all. The night before, I found it difficult to sleep. Lying there, I stared at the ceiling, contemplating all the possible outcomes, what I would do if I was victorious, what I would face if I failed, and how I had ended up in this position. The morning of the trial was overcast, as if the weather sensed the weight of the situation. I dressed thoughtfully. I wore the same suit I had for the first hearing. My hands quivered as I buttoned it up. The courtroom was busier this time. Many more people were present, more witnesses. The case had garnered attention. A mother bringing a lawsuit against her daughter, a tale of family betrayal that fascinated onlookers in a morbid way. Jade arrived with a full entourage. Her attorney, Keith Thompson, 2 legal aides, Marcus, and his parents, all impeccably dressed and all exuding confidence and authority. Money aims to assert dominance through its influence. I arrived by myself alongside Lawyer Reed, yet I didn't feel inferior this time. That was because I knew the truth was in my favor, and that held greater value than any wealth they possessed. The court proceedings extended over 2 consecutive days. Both parties shared their points of view, provided witnesses, and submitted proof. Lawyer Thompson introduced specialists who evaluated my signature, confirming its genuineness on all the documents I had willingly signed. Conversely, Attorney Reed presented his own specialists, graphologists who detected variations, minor discrepancies in various signatures, inconsistent pressure on the strokes, slight angle differences, all sufficient to raise reasonable doubt. I took my place on the witness stand. I recounted my story completely, my tone steady, not shedding tears or exaggerating, just sharing the painful reality of how I relied on my daughter, how they assured me I would be included in the property deal, and how I realized they had deceived me. Lawyer Thompson questioned me aggressively, attempting to portray me as deceitful, a money-hungry mother. He probed why I failed to read the documents prior to signing, why I placed such trust, and why I felt regret now. I don't regret having faith in them. I regret trusting the wrong individuals. A mother shouldn't need to scrutinize the fine details when her daughter seeks assistance. A mother should be able to trust that her own daughter won't betray her. My response lingered in the silence of the courtroom. I noticed slight nods from several jurors. I saw the judge take note of what I said. Then it was Jade's turn. She approached the witness stand wearing an expensive dress, flawless makeup, and delivering a rehearsed act. She cried, expressing her love for me, claiming she never intended to hurt me, stating that it was all a misunderstanding. I only wanted to support my mom, Your Honor, to provide her with a home, but she is very controlling. She wants to dominate every situation. She signed those papers of her own accord. And now that things haven't gone her way, she is retaliating with this lawsuit. Her voice broke at perfectly timed moments. Her tears flowed as they should. It was a brilliant act. I noticed how some people in the room were touched, looking at her with compassion. But then, Attorney Reed executed a clever move. He displayed the messages Jade had sent on a large screen, showing the chats where she discussed planning to exclude me from the title, referred to me as a problem, and mocked how simple it was to deceive me. Miss Sterling, could you clarify these messages? It states exactly my mom is so gullible she signs everything I present to her. Those are your words, right? Jade's complexion paled. She sought assistance from her attorney, but Thompson could only protest, asserting that the messages were acquired unlawfully. The judge had previously accepted the evidence. It was too late to prevent him. I felt rage. I felt frustration. You didn't simply express it out of anger. You created it, you planned it, and most significantly, you executed it. You implemented a scheme to swindle your own mother. It wasn't a fraud. It was a gift that she now wants returned. A gift that you aim to secure through trickery. A gift which you intend to take from your mother without her awareness, to later sell the property. That, Miss Sterling, is not a gift. It is stealing. Jade was at a loss for words. She became quiet, glancing at her attorney, trying to find the appropriate response, but there were no words that could clarify her actions. The trial progressed with additional witnesses, more documents, and arguments from both sides, yet I realized the vital moment had already occurred. When Jade failed to clarify those messages and was laid bare for all to see, the judge called for a break to consider the matter. It lasted 3 hours. Those hours felt like an eternity. I waited on a bench outside the courtroom. Attorney Reed attempted to reassure me, to instill hope, but I had lost all hope. I had reached a point of acceptance, prepared for whatever would happen next. At last, we were summoned back inside. Everyone took their places. The judge entered, his face serious and unreadable. I have reviewed all the evidence submitted by both sides. I have heard the testimonies, scrutinized the documents, and I have reached a decision. The air in the room was completely still. No one inhaled. No one shifted. I determined that there is enough evidence of fraud, that Ms. Gloria Johnson was deceived by false assurances into giving up her money, and that she signed papers without fully understanding their consequences. Additionally, there was a clear intention to keep her from the rights to the property she helped buy. My heart began to race. Attorney Reed clasped my hand tightly. As a result, I declare this. The documents that Ms. Johnson signed, which waived her rights, are void. Ms. Johnson is entitled to either half of the property or, if that's not possible, the complete reimbursement of the $50,000 she provided, along with accumulated interest. This amounts to another $15,000, totaling $65,000. I had succeeded. After months of struggle, humiliation, and uncertainty, I had triumphed. Justice was real after all. Moreover, I order Ms. Jade Sterling and Mr. Marcus Sterling to cover Ms. Gloria Johnson's legal expenses and impose a fine of $10,000 for the intentional fraud committed against a vulnerable family member. I heard a choked sob behind me. It was Jade, her face completely drained of color. Marcus was gripping her arm. Both appeared utterly crushed. The parties have 30 days to adhere to this ruling, or the property will be subject to seizure. The case is concluded. The gavel's sound echoed like thunder. With that noise, everything came to an end. I had succeeded. I had regained my dignity, my funds, my life. I exited the courtroom with pride. Attorney Reed praised me, gave me a hug, and celebrated our win. Yet I felt an unusual emptiness inside. Yes, I had received compensation, I had achieved justice, but I had lost my daughter, and that hurt far more than any amount of money. The 30 days the judge allowed for payment passed with unbearable stress. Jade and Marcus needed to take a loan, sell their new car, and drain their savings. In order to gather the $75,000, which included $65,000 for me and a $10,000 fine for the state. I continued to live in the house during that period, but things had changed. Now I felt empowered. They now had to be cautious around me, as the judge had made it clear that any acts of hostility could lead to harsher penalties. We did not talk. We encountered each other in the hallways like shadows, each lost in our own thoughts, hopping for this ordeal to conclude, though for each of us. The ordeal held a different meaning. The day I got the check was peculiar. There was no celebration, no remarks. Attorney Thompson came to see me personally and handed over the $65,000 check, which was more than I had initially lost. I accepted it confidently, without shaking or doubts. "Thank you, attorney," I said, and he simply nodded. He seemed worn out and defeated, as if this struggle had taken a toll beyond mere time and effort. After he departed, I stared at the check for a long while. This slip of paper stood for my victory and my justice, but it also marked the final end of my relationship with my daughter. After this, there would be no turning back. There was no repairing what had been shattered. That afternoon, I contacted a real estate agent. I asked her to assist me in finding a small place, a one-bedroom apartment, something modest, something that was mine, something no one could take from me. Within 2 weeks, I discovered the ideal location, an apartment in an older but well-kept building. It had a tiny kitchen, a full bathroom, a living space with a large window allowing sunlight to pour in, and a small balcony that could hold 2 pots. It was priced at $250,000. I purchased it outright. No loans, no debt. It belonged to me entirely. I reviewed the deeds line by line with my attorney before signing. On the day of the move, I hired 2 men to assist me. I didn't have many possessions. Just my clothes, my books, my photographs, the box of important documents, the balcony plants I had nurtured for years, and the ceramic mug Frank gave me. That was it. Jade didn't come out of her room when I was leaving. There was no farewell, no final hug, no words of reconciliation, only silence. A heavy silence that conveyed more than 1,000 words. Marcus was in the living room when I took my final box downstairs. He gazed at me with what seemed like regret. Or perhaps it was simply relief that I was finally departing. "Gloria, I apologize for everything." Those were the only words he had spoken to me in months. I remained silent. Why would I claim to have forgiven him, that all was well when nothing was well, when it would never be okay again? I simply nodded and exited that door for the last time. My new place was tiny, quiet, and bare, but it belonged to me. On my first night, I sat on the floor, still lacking furniture, holding a cup of hot tea and gazing out at the city lights. I shed tears. I cried for everything I had lost, for the daughter I once believed I had, for a family that never truly existed, for the years spent on empty promises. I cried until no more tears could fall, until the sorrow transformed into a more bearable feeling, something I could continue with. The next months focused on rebuilding. I bought basic furniture, a bed, a small table, 2 chairs, and a comfy armchair for reading, nothing pricey or flashy, just what was necessary for a dignified life. I used some leftover funds to enroll in a baking class, something I had always longed to do but never found the time for. I learned to bake cakes, cookies, and artisan bread, and I found out I had a knack for it. I began selling my baked goods to neighbors and small shops in the area. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but it was mine, earned through my hard work, without relying on anyone, without needing to owe anyone anything. One afternoon, while I was watering my plants on the balcony, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed an unknown number. I paused before answering, but a voice inside urged me to continue. Mom. Jade's voice struck me hard, like a punch to the gut. I hadn't talked to her in 8 months since I left their home. Hello, Jade. There was silence on the line. I could hear her heavy breathing as if she was trying to find the right words. I just wanted to let you know that Marcus and I are getting a divorce. He blames me for everything, losing the money, the shame, everything, and I'm all by myself, Mom. Everyone has turned against me. Her voice broke. She started to cry. And part of me, that part that will always be her mother, wanted to console her. It wanted to assure her that everything would be all right, that I had forgiven her, that we could start anew. But there was another part of me, the part that had been betrayed, taken from, and humiliated, that remained strong. I'm really sorry for what you're facing, Jade. I truly am, but I can't be there for you right now. Not after everything has happened. However, you are my mother, you are all I have left, and you were my child, you were my only one. Yet you took from me. You let me down, you made me feel worthless. So at this moment, I can't fulfill your needs. Perhaps in the future, but not now. Mom, please look after yourself, Jade. I truly wish you nothing but the best, but I require time. A significant amount of time. I ended the call before she could reply, before my determination could falter. I disconnected the call and stood there shaking, weeping, yet also feeling empowered because I had established a boundary, because I prioritized my own tranquility over guilt. More months went by. Autumn changed into winter, and winter shifted into spring. Life marched on. I formed new friendships in the building with women my age, widows, divorcees, women each with their unique tales of suffering and resilience. We gathered for tea on Thursdays, exchanged recipes, and shared laughter. I lived. One afternoon in April, I was on my balcony tending to my plants when I spotted something that brought me joy. One of the succulents I had taken from Jade's house had flowered. A tiny pink, delicate blossom. It had thrived despite the move, the adjustment, and now it was flourishing in its own environment, in its own soil, at its own rhythm. And I came to the realization that I was similar to that plant. I had been uprooted from what I believed was my home. I had been wounded, nearly shattered. Yet I endured. I adjusted. And now I was blossoming again in my own space on my own terms. That evening, I made a simple meal for myself, vegetable soup, homemade bread, and herbal tea. I sat at my little table by the window. I took my time eating, enjoying each bite, cherishing every moment of calm. I didn't possess much. I didn't have a large house. I didn't have the ideal family. I didn't have the aspirations I once dreamed of, but I had something even more valuable. I had my dignity. I had my peace of mind. I had my freedom. And I felt satisfied knowing that I didn't stay quiet, that I didn't let them walk all over me, that I fought for what belonged to me. Before going to sleep, I jotted down a few lines in my journal, something I had begun as a form of therapy. I wrote the most important lesson I had learned through this journey. I didn't succeed by yelling the loudest. I triumphed by demonstrating the truth. I didn't stoop to their level. I didn't fill myself with resentment. I merely laid out the facts, and that affected them more than any insult could. That is my victory, not becoming what they were to me, not losing my essence while reclaiming my life. I closed the journal, switched off the light, and lay down in my bed, in my apartment, in my home. For the first time in many years, I experienced deep sleep, free from nightmares or fear, just a sense of tranquility. This was because I had shut that chapter, not from spite, not from animosity, but from a place of affection, a love for myself. The type of love I had lost sight of and forgotten I was worthy of. A love that no child, no child's partner, nor any false hope could take from me. That was sufficient. It was beyond sufficient. It was everything. Did you enjoy my tale? Which city are you tuning in from? Let's connect in the comments. If you like the tale, you can show your support by sending a super thanks so I can continue sharing more stories like this. Thank you very much for your kind support. I eagerly await your thoughts on the story. On your screen, you will find 2 new life stories that I definitely recommend. There is so much more content available on my channel. Remember to subscribe. I will see you in the next life story with warmth and appreciation.